Welcome back to another of my videos. I've got a lovely surprise for you today, all you art lovers out there and bookworms. Now, this is a book. It's called Growing Up with the Impressionists. It's a diary of Julie Manet. Julie Manet, and she's only 14 when she wrote this diary. She wrote this diary for 6 years, and as you know, I love books where people have written their diaries over the months and the years. So, book of the diary of Julie Manet. Let's get into it. All you art lovers out there, I love this, and it's a beautiful day again. There's a slight breeze, which is most welcome. Yesterday was the hottest day of the year, but today is just as hot with a little light breeze. So yeah, let's get on with this book. You're going to love it. Now, Julie Manet was the only child of Impressionist painter Berthe Morisot and Eugene, the younger brother of Edward Manet. Young Julie is able to describe the everyday life of Impressionist painters and to reveal their often startling opinions with her mother, Berthe Morisot. She is frequently in the company of Degas and Renoir, with whom she sketches and paints, and she visits Monet at Giverny. Thursday, 7th of September 1893. We went to see Tante Suzanne, Edward Manet's widow, at Geneville's. I liked her much better this time. I took Laertes along so he could become better acquainted with Folly, which is even uglier than I thought. We didn't stay at Tante Suzanne's for long, as we had to come by carriage and we were going home the same way. After getting back from Geneville's, we set off for the Bois with our coloured crayons. Julie had been given a new box of crayons for Christmas the previous year. At the entrance to the Bois, we met my godfather in a carriage. We started by drawing people who were going by on the road around the lake while we were on a lawn right beside the road. On the pre-Catalan side, Maman and I were sitting very close to each other, with her bag between us on the ground and Laertes in the front. All of a sudden, a man in black with a horrible yellow face came towards us, stroked Laertes, then with a hideous hand seized the bag and fled, running in the direction of the pre-Catalan. We screamed. Maman had thrown her penknife and gloves at him straight away without even thinking. Needless to say, there was no one about at the time. I ran off to tell the first person I could find, who happened to be a man from the restaurant, who was watering his plants. He nodded stupidly and said, "Oh, really?" In Maman's bag there was a purse with only 6 francs 50 in it. But what was much more annoying is that we lost the bunch of keys, with both door keys, the keys of the secretaire where the silver is kept, and the desk key where the money and the jewellery are kept. We were utterly shaken by the experience. Apparently, I was as white as a sheet and could feel myself trembling. Maman spoke to a park keeper who was at the top of the lake. He began by saying that the place where we were was not his responsibility, but he took our address and we described the thief to him. When we got home, Maman told the police about it, and a person overhearing the story said to Maman, I bet you knew him. Friday, 8th of September, 1893. This morning I sat for Maman, who is doing my portrait. In the afternoon we went to Durand Reals, where there were quite a lot of pictures hanging, all of which I had seen before except 3 by Puvis de Chavannes. Having learnt that M. Renoir was in Paris, we climbed all the way up to Montmartre, where his house is. There's a spectacular view from there. Since M. and Emin Renoir were out, we were entertained in the garden by Pierre. He wanted to show us his father's paintings and said that they now had 2 studios, one a bit lower down in Montmartre and one at home for when Mem Renoir had a cold. After a while, Mimi Renoir came home. She took us up to the studio and showed us the landscapes that Renoir did in Brittany. At first sight, they produced rather an odd effect. They always have masses of sunshine and trees done with crimson lake and emerald green and antimony yellow. As one looks at them, however, one begins to find them rather lovely. Monsieur Renoir got back late and escorted us as far as the foot of Montmartre. It was already after 7. He had stayed there more than 2 hours. He is supposed to be coming for dinner tomorrow. Maman worked on my portrait a good part in the morning. In the afternoon we went to Cernès by boat, to M. Fermes. The Seine was very pretty. So was St. Cloud, which could be seen clearly with its steeple. We came back on foot through the Bois, where there were newlyweds everywhere, which was most amusing. All those rather ordinary people seemed to be thrilled to bits to be in a carriage in the Bois de Boulogne for the one and only time in their lives. We rested not far from the Longchamp racecourse, painted so well by Uncle Edouard, the St. Claude in the distance. While we were there, we saw Dr. Evans, who still seems to be very friendly. 3 English Quaker ladies went by in a fiacre, all of them very ugly, with their huge black veils. There was something frightening, almost apparition-like about them. Returning along the Avenue de Akissa, we saw the little that is left of elegant Parisian society. Monsieur Renoir arrived very late for dinner, appearing with a portrait of Wagner under his arm. He was on his way back from Mimi Bonnier's and had got lost in the avenues around Les Invalides. He was carrying Wagner's portrait because a gentleman had asked him for a copy of it, but he didn't know how to go about it. After dinner, we looked at the portrait, which is really very handsome. Maman talked about Valvins and with M. Renoir, who said that he would come if we went back again. That is, if we are not invited to the limousine. He himself was once almost invited to go to the limousine by M. Haviland. Friday, 23rd of August. This morning we painted in the woods below Pont-Aven. We went by carriage to Quimperle for the day, arriving in the town via a square planted with trees and surrounded by water, from where one had a view of the houses crowded around the church with its square belfry. First of all, we visited this round church built on the model of the great mosque of Constantinople. It was curious. There were many altars at different levels. One of them seemed to be in a cellar. Two others were at the ground level, and another was above, to which one climbed up, like getting on to a bridge. Next, we searched in the Rue de Chateau, where there's a ruined church, with the house of Madame de la Cille, a relative and neighbour of my Tante Chevalier. We found it, and Madame de la Cille, who I didn't know, opened the door to us, looked at us with an air of astonishment and cried, "Good gracious, the young Morisette ladies!" He asked us into a small parlour, and where two old Quimperlé ladies, mother and daughter, were sitting dressed in the style of 50 years ago. They talked to us about our mothers who once stayed in this town. Tante Yves lived here, and when we went out with her old cousin, he showed us the house where Paul was born, in the square. A lovely riverside house with roses around the door. Later, we crossed some ancient lanes, past two timbered houses with jutting first stories, and climbed up to the old church, which situated in the square where the market is held, and they had a fine porch. Inside, beneath some old gilded statues, including quite a funny one of the Virgin Mary, the Way of the Cross was in pretty colours. In front of the altar, a man who had too much to drink, which seems to happen rather often with the Britons, was asleep with his staff by his side. After we had looked round Quimperlé, which we liked very much, Madame de la Salle gave us such a big tea that when we got back to the hotel in Portavine, we could only manage a hot drink. There, a discussion on Uncle Edouard took place between M. Renoir and an ill-formed amateur painter, M. Heriot. He said that he didn't admire everything about Manet. Renoir replied that in the case Mem Heriot didn't really like Manet, that when one admired the work of a master, there could be nothing displeasing in it at all. Monsieur Heriot kept on about Delaunay, whose painting he liked so much. He had painted his mother's portrait so beautifully that it had all crackled. That proved that it's a bad picture, said Renoir. Painting is a craft which must be learned, and a good picture is well painted. After a few jokes from Madame Heriot, in which he said that the answer must be to be a painter and decorator, M. Renoir said that he was still learning his craft, that he wanted always to learn more and never be content with what he was doing. I have a great deal of ambition, he said. I would rather not paint at all than be a mediocre painter. Monsieur Heriot, overexcited, ended up by saying that Olympia was atrocious, and he repeated this endlessly. Monsieur Renoir almost lost his temper, and the discussion was interminable. It always provokes me when someone attacks my uncle's work like this, and even though I tell myself that everyone who says his painting is monstrosities must be an imbecile, I still want to reply, and I get angry.